Okay, so hi, I'm Jane here, and I'm with Janice and David in Victoria, and I'm going to talk to them about their love story. And the first question is always, how did you meet?
I'll start this one.
Okay, all right.
Years ago, we've been together for a good 8 years now, but years ago I used to have absolutely epic Halloween parties, like police showing up a couple times, and really like big Halloween parties. And a buddy of mine, his partner was a friend of Janice's, who said, "You've got to get over to this party." So around midnight, Halloween, Janice showed up as kind of a Rocky Horror Picture Show reject, looking kind of a little bit like Magenta
Okay.
from Rocky Horror Picture Show, and she showed up at my party because of her friend, and she walked in and we met. What was it?
I think I thought he was dressed up as David Bowie, and I was like, "Are you David Bowie?" And he said, "No, but I'll be whatever you want me to be." So I said, "Well, you look like David Bowie. I think you were supposed to be Buddy Holly."
No, I think so.
I think
whatever. I'm not Buddy Holly anymore.
It was a good first line. I was impressed. It was a good first line.
And then after that, that was the line. I guess that was the line. And then I just remember watching her leave a couple hours later, and took a little bit of sleuthing to find her. But eventually we got a hold of each other via, I guess, Facebook, actually.
Yeah. By Facebook, not through the mutual friend, then.
Well, actually, the mutual friend was kind of funny. He was a little bit protective of her. So he was he was he was kind of a casual acquaintance of mine, like sort of a dancing buddy at nightclubs. And he was starting to make me jump through hoops before he'd do an introduction. Like, I'd never gone out for dinner with him in my life. And now I find myself having to go out for dinner with this guy. And it's like,
do an interview.
It was kind of like an interview, seriously. And then finally I sort of got tired of the scrutiny, and I thought, well, I can find her on Facebook. So I went to his partner's Facebook page, looked at her friends, found her, and shot her a note. And eventually
months later,
like a couple of months later, we finally went out on our first date to Rebar. Janice is, I'll catch flack for this, but Janice is a vegan. So,
which he likes to tell everybody about.
But so that's why we went to Rebar, because she doesn't eat meat. So there you go. And so, we went out to Rebar, and then
and that was that.
And I guess pretty much that was that. Yeah. That
was that. Okay. So, and what's your version, Janice?
My version would be a girlfriend of mine who I met doing a commercial, and so we've been working kind of in film together. She's like, "Oh, there's this Film Dave." She called him Film Dave. She's like, "You gotta know Film Dave. He's having his Christmas or his Halloween party." And he's like, "I don't know Film Dave." She's like, "Everybody knows Dave." And when I showed up, I was like, "I don't know you." Well, that's great, because it's a pretty small town, and
right,
within Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
So I crashed the party. Rode my bike in the rain, and and met this lovely guy one time. Never heard from him or saw him again for a couple months,
and then you all of a sudden he pulled up on Messenger, and you went, "Oh, okay."
We definitely connected on a couple things, art-wise, music-wise, opera. I remember.
Yeah.
And I think we went to the film fest the first few months we were dating, and that was kind of fun.
Victoria Film Festival,
dressed up and fun things,
and your first date at Rebar went well. Okay, so then my next question is like, well, when did you know that Janice was the one, or that Dave was the one?
That's a pretty good question. I mean, one might argue that it was the second she walked into the party, or on the goodbye as she was leaving the party.
You went, "Yes, I've got to find that woman."
I mean, I did. And it took a bit of sleuthing to do that, but I eventually did, And I mean, we got along well. I mean, we're opposite in so many ways, you know, like Janice is a yoga instructor. I'm like totally like ramming speed type A personality. She tried to get me to meditate, and I can meditate for like 1,000. Now it's like, okay, now what? You know,
Oh, I
I want
know.
to go ride bikes, you know, so yeah. I mean, we're quite different in many ways, but early on in our relationship, she has a friend that does like, you better pick up the astrology story from here. The stars lining up.
Well, in the tradition, the yoga tradition, there's like the yantra charts, which are a very specific pattern of numbers that you're kind of born into. It's kind of the Vedic version of numerology, for example.
Okay.
So many years ago, I was trained in this, and just for fun, I kind of take it with a grain of salt, but I'd always work out people's numbers. And it's very, very specific because you have a dominant number that's sort of a birth path, and then these other three numbers that change 3 times in your life. So that specific combination of numbers, I've never, in all the years I've played around with it, found that the combination was our numbers were exactly the same. I was like, how does that work out? Of our birthdays and our you know, quite different and many years apart. And basically in the Vedic numerology are basically are the same. And
So
I've never met anybody that had the same Vedic
wow,
numbers.
same numbers. That's
It's really interesting.
and it's Ayurvedic numbers?
It's the Vedic tradition from yantra. So yantras are specific, like numerology, according to the patterns and the universe of energy that's coming in and out. And it works out to be kind of numerological, where you have kind of a birth path. It's sort of the dominant energy that was in the works when you were born. And then each time in your life, these numbers change a little bit. The minor influence changes. And ours just happen to be exactly the same. And I've shown them to other friends of mine who know it, and they're like, that's crazy. But I mean, I take it with a grain of salt, but I definitely gave me.
There you go. Okay, so then that's kind of when you knew. Oh, but did you wait till you did the numbers before you knew that Dave was the guy?
No, and still then I was like, oh, okay, it's just some numbers. But yeah, I remember actually the first year we just started dating around probably Christmas time, and in January it snowed and you know, working in film, it's like, well, I don't have work until March. I can drive you anywhere you want to go. Part of me was like, oh, that's worrisome. And also, so we knew it was a keeper. You were showing up in the snow to drive me to a yoga class.
Things slow down for me at this time of year. So it was, she needed rides, and I had a 4-wheel drive. So it was like, I was just like
chauffeur.
Your chauffeur for anywhere she needed to go.
Perfect.
Good friendship and good companionship for me, and that we had a lot in common, and that you make me laugh. And that's kind of what has
well, that's my question then, is what makes you work? And also, what wisdom do you have for other couples?
Well, I say sense of humor for sure. For me, anyways, that I think every day David does something to make me laugh or scares me or does something unusual. I don't know about advice for people. I would just think to, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, we're unmarried. I mean, we've even been to a couple weddings that have, sort of dismantled in the time we're together.
Right.
And,
we've watched.
I've gone to some weddings, and I'm just gonna, just remain shacked up because that's worked for us. We want to change it.
Right.
And,
right. And that's fine. There's no need to, just do your own thing.
I think that we both came into this though with a good sense of ourselves and autonomy, and I can certainly keep myself busy and entertained. And if he goes away on long shoots, which he sometimes does. I mean, in the 8 years we've been together, I think we've been to Greece and Hawaii and Italy and Ireland and Spain, all without me. I've all watched it on Facebook. Oh, I'm okay with, because I came into this as a fairly independent person. I've lived overseas many years by myself, and I think that really works for us as well. And surprisingly, since the pandemic, now we're kind of stuck with each other. And it seems to be working out so far. So good.
In all those trips, though, Janice actually did come out and took advantage of me being in England already. So Janice did join me at the tail end of one shoot in England, and we hung out in in London for a few
Amsterdam
days, and then jumped over to Amsterdam for a few
fancy
days.
raw
So
food birthday dinner.
that's a story. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you see, that works out when you get to tag along. But it is good. Okay, so I've heard people talk about that. Like, I mean, just knowing who you are already makes a big difference, and being really confident in who you are, and not being like having to need the other person in that kind of needy way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we were both in a different stage in our lives, and I was pretty independent and comfortable, and had kind of signed off. And I was like, I'm pretty confident with myself. So perhaps that's the secret. I've heard that from a lot of my friends. Are like, as soon as I sort of stopped looking and stopped looking for anything, and really enjoyed my own company, and worked on that, then things fall into place. And I think that's
Yeah.
you can say that.
What's your advice, David? What's your advice?
I guess I don't really have advice as to how to make it work.
Or what makes you guys work?
I said, well, I mean, just the fact that, I mean, we do get along and we are friends, and I mean, we can go our separate ways, and we're not super needy. So I can tell you all those things work, but I mean, if I was going to give any advice, I'd say if you're in a relationship that isn't working, out the door with a parachute, like bail.
Bail.
So if I was going to give any advice, it would be, if it's not working, then get out. But
there we go.
Well, that is good advice. Because a lot of people think they've got to stick to it and stick around even when it's really not working. Yeah.
As John Cleese once said in Faulty Towers, when he's having a fight with his wife Sybil from Faulty Towers, he's like, was that my life? It's like, oh, oops, do I get another? Nope, sorry, afraid that's it. Only the one.
Only one, exactly. So make it good. Cool. Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing your story.
That's it. Thank you. Well, that was pretty easy. Just one really quick story. So it's my birthday. Okay. We're in Amsterdam, and Janice books this super special dinner.
I thought it would be like Love. Like it was like it looked on the internet like it was some fancy raw food place in Amsterdam, and it looked amazing, and you had to book in, ahead of time. This was pre-pandemic, so booking was like, oh, it must be a cool place. And so I booked this like months ahead. We get to Amsterdam, I booked us a fancy place, and it's close to where our Airbnb is, and we get there, and it's like the smallest little place, and there's nobody inside. Like we need reservations. There's like
it's kind of like a lunchtime vegan bar.
Okay.
And so the guys look at us like we got reservations.
I'm
like crazy.
Okay.
And it was the one guy did everything. So he like greets us. It's his place. Wow. He went and made the meal. It was like the funniest we've ever had.
It was not a very, it was some weird cold lasagna you had. I think we had to go up for Dutch pancakes afterwards.
Yeah, I think I probably did like follow it up.
I tried. I just tried.
something hot and Dutch after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, never mind the raw food.
I definitely
put it this way, reservations weren't required. We were required.
Well, sometimes you're in a different country. You don't know. You just think.
You don't know. On Facebook, it looked like a larger, the way they've obviously photographed the room. It's very.
I think so. Another couple did come in after a while, so we weren't entirely alone in the restaurant. But anyway, I guess that's our Amsterdam, my birthday story. So
your birthday story, and you're still here together despite the birthday present, despite the dinner. Oh, that's good. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Appreciate it.